Hi, everybody. Dr. Duke, and this is The Takeaway, and we're bringing on board again Alex Newman. Alex reports on a wonderfully interesting case from Cal State Northridge, a university in California, Northridge, where a actual scientist has discovered something that challenges standard narratives about things like evolution, and for that, the scientist got himself fired. Talk a little bit about this for us, Alex.
Well, thank you, Duke. And so, essentially, what happened is this scientist, a microscopist over at the California State University at Northridge, he was up on a dinosaur dig in Montana. Found a big triceratops bone of some sort, one of the biggest ever, I think, or at least one of the biggest at that site. And he took it back to his lab and examined it under the microscope, and he found tissue there, tissue from an organism. And he said, "Hey, this tissue could not possibly have survived 65 million years. So this dinosaur bone is clearly not 65 million years old. That would be silly." So he published his findings in a peer-reviewed journal. I forget the name off the top of my head, and he estimated that he assumed the age was probably around 4,000 years old. Which would go well with some of the narratives about the flood. And so the university, rather than responding with a paper of its own saying you're wrong for the following reasons, dear journal, would you please publish our rebuttal of this scientist's information, they fired the guy. They sent a biology professor into his office and said, "We're not going to tolerate your religion at our university," and they fired him 2 weeks after his paper was published. And they said, "Oh, we were just reorganizing our biology department. It had nothing to do with his religious views, and especially nothing to do with his find of this dinosaur bone or his interpretation of the find." And so it went to court, and it went on for a while. The university tried to have the case thrown out. The judge refused to throw it out, and so the university finally offered almost $500,000 taxpayer dollars to the guy if he would just go away.
And that's it. The universities would rather pay huge settlements to guys like this, to biologists, scientists, by the way. You mentioned religion. This was not a guy who was arguing anything religious other than the fact that he found a bone that had tissue on it, which suggested that this bone couldn't be 65 million years old. I assume he did not then go back to the book of Genesis and argue that he didn't do those things. And simply for bucking the trends of science, by finding something scientific in a scientific context that doesn't seem to support long existing arguments, the university wanted to get rid of him. And when they illegally got rid of him, they actually paid a huge settlement. They were glad to pay your taxpayer money to get rid of somebody whose scientific worldview doesn't conform. And this is the other thing. We have all sorts of cases over the last 10 years of scientists at major universities who dared to challenge global warming orthodoxy. These are serious. I'm thinking of Judith Curry at Georgia Tech University, who ultimately had to give up her job because she argued against some of the assumptions of global warming science, and they drove her out of her position, more or less, because we can't have any kind of argumentation or debate. If you're creating a system where scientists have to stick within politically acceptable boundaries to do their research. You're allowed to research dinosaur bones as long as you don't challenge any kind of dating or any kind of narrative. You're allowed to research global warming as long as you are starting from the premise and concluding with the premise that global warming is man-made. We'll get rid of you. Science itself has been co-opted by these people. Remind me again who the Grand Inquisitors are. Remind me again who are the people who are putting faith above science. Is that us or is that them now, Alex?
You're exactly right, Duke. I mean, so many good points there. And you're right. This scientist in California, he did not go around and say, "See, I told you Genesis was true." He might believe that, but he didn't do that. In fact, he did make some YouTube videos, and he said, "If my findings are correct, that destroys the deep time argument. And if the deep time argument is destroyed, then your evolution theory is destroyed." He did say that, and that was intolerable for them. So rather than rebutting with facts and logical arguments and peer-reviewed papers of their own, they just get rid of the guy. And you're right, the global warming thing, I've been covering this for 10 years. I've been at all these UN conferences. I've been interviewing all these scientists. The story is always the same. If you work at a major university or a typical government-funded university and you challenge the global warming narrative, you will face consequences. You will be blackballed. You will be blacklisted. You can't publish your papers in scientific journals anymore. If you're tenured, maybe they can't fire you outright, but they will do everything they can to make your life miserable. And that's a very, very sad testament again to the state of education in America. The government has adopted its official religion, and it it encourages the adoption of its religion through grants and through policy and through what it funds and what it doesn't. And if you disagree with that, say the global warming narrative or the evolution narrative or anything, you are considered the heretic, and they will go after you with everything. Right now they literally talk about we should punish people. There's people saying we should execute climate deniers or put them on trial for crimes against humanity. So that's where we're at now, and it does feel very much like a return to time past, that we probably don't want to go there.
Well, the College Fix, and I urge our listeners to go take a look at the College Fix. It's a wonderful site that documents the goofy things that take place on college campuses across the country and across the world. College Fix is a great article today. 11 different university professors have signed a document that argues that conservative-based news that challenges universities is violence. That any conservative website, including the College Fix, including this site, that challenges what takes place on universities is actually participating in violence by challenging universities. This is where we are now, right? And mom and dad, you need to know this, right? We're at the point now, certainly at the university level, where to challenge them in any way, shape, or form, to have ideas or to invite speakers who are conservative or Republican or Christian, it's not just politically incorrect anymore. Now they're equating it to actual violence. And this is a step along the way. If conservative speech and conservative news is now violence, then it is not something that can be simply banned from campus. It must be something that is actively combated with the left's own violence, and that's where this is heading. That's why there is very little griping on college campuses when leftists pull down posters or punch people in the face or vandalize in the name of the left-wing causes. They don't care because the left on college campuses believes any kind of conservative, traditional, Republican, Christian speech, ideas, thoughts, these things are considered violence now. And you can see there are real-world consequences for scientists on college campuses who posit theories or who discover things that may challenge liberal narratives.
It's where we are today, and it's it's a sad fact of life. And parents out there, if you have kids and you're thinking about possibly sending them to college, keep all this in mind, right? There are still some good universities and colleges out there, primarily the Christian ones, the private ones that have not bought into this left-wing, secular pagan worldview. But you got to look really hard, and the last thing you want is for your poor son or daughter to graduate with $200,000 in debt, and all they got in exchange was a head full of propaganda and brainwashing. I mean, it's a disgrace.
Ladies and gentlemen, Alex Newman with another great report. Pay attention. The world's changing. And this is, without overstating it, this is how fascism gets born. When the state, and most universities are state institutions, when the state controls the money based on what you can say, what you can write, how you can speak on college campuses, when the state determines who gets funded and who doesn't based on politics, not actual research, when that happens, you're way closer to fascism than you thought you ever were. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Good to see you again, Alex. Talk to you soon. If you enjoyed that video, I encourage you to join our Patriot Club at FreedomProject.com. We have some wonderful gifts and perks for your membership. I'm Dr. Duke. Thanks for watching.